After my video on the backstory of the new versions of the original characters in Black Ops 7 Zombies, I couldn't help but notice that one of those things was not like the other. Analysing all of the information we had, it became abundantly clear that the information we have been given so far about Richtofen is of a drastically different nature to any of the others. And so, as we approach and are in the final month before the release of Black Ops 7, I want to discuss this in deeper detail. For those of you who didn't see the previous video, I'll give a little recap of the facts we have so far here. In Black Ops 7, the new variants of Dempsey and Nikolai, Takeo and Richtofen are all from different realities with their own timelines, and have arrived in the Dark Aether under mysterious circumstances. They are not all from the same realm, unlike Ultimus and Primus, Ultimus being from the original dimension, Primus being from dimension 63, and so weren't initially a group like them. It seems possible that the worlds they are from are worlds that were folded into the Dark Aether from the Aether multiverse at the end of Tag the Totem, as we have always assumed that the Dark Aether is one single reality. But this is an assumption and might not be the case. Moreover, it might also be an option that while these characters are from old Aether dimensions, they didn't enter the Dark Aether at the moment of the multiversal collapse, but instead were pulled in through other uncertain means. As I stated in the previous video, I lean more towards the latter. We've seen a lot to do with bloodshed and anguish weakening the dimensional veil, and it seems like all of our characters are incredibly traumatized and have experienced tragic circumstances. It's possible that these circumstances are what pulled them into the Dark Aether, except that's not quite true. Dempsey, Nikolai and Takeo all do have the implication of tragic circumstance. It's true. In part 1 I discussed these. Dempsey might have borne witness to even more horror than was seen normally during the Vietnam War, possibly witnessing the deployment of Nova 6 by Kravchenko on innocence. Nikolai was a soldier in a war he didn't believe in and was likely compelled to commit horrific atrocities on innocents. Takeo is the sole survivor of a samurai clan who were betrayed, and even the women and children were burned alive, possibly having fled the field of battle and having that shame haunt him. These are clearly all very broken men with shadowy pasts that relate to their circumstance. But Richtofen is different. Now, before we continue with the rest of Richtofen's new grand scheme, I first have an amazing service to let you be aware of. Enjoy. Before we go further, I want to let you know that I've partnered with Aniba.com, your ultimate gaming marketplace, with over 40,000 digital products from AAA titles to indie gems. Aniba has something for every gamer. PC, PlayStation, Xbox, you name it. Grab hot deals on games, DLCs and gift cards. Like if you want to get Black Ops 6 today, it's at a steal. It's super easy, just a few clicks away and you are playing. Plus, with secure payments and 24/7 live support, you are in safe hands. It's perfect if you want to buy Call of Duty games or skins, Call of Duty points, etc. for cheap, and you can get cashback too. You can buy all of this stuff for much cheaper than retail prices. And what's more is that right now Aniba are hosting an additional 10% off discount, valid only in the USA until the 4th of November, 12 noon Central European time. So head to Aniba.com using my exclusive link in the description and that you can see on screen to score epic deals and that 10% off today. This code is only working with my affiliate link. If the code is not working, you have to go incognito or delete your cookies. The code is only valid for some select games, but don't worry, there's a ton of other cheap options for you. Hopefully this service will help save you a ton of money on gaming. Now we'll get back into the rest of the video. His character bio reads, Dr. Edward Richtofen, yes he's a doctor once more, a brilliant but unhinged scientist and hero of the Reich, finds himself torn from 1945 in a world where the Axis powers triumphed over the Allied nations. Shaped by ambitions and tainted by corruption, he masks his innate sadism and considerable ego behind quick wit and a charming smile. He vows that reality itself will ultimately bow to his designs. Clearly clearly this is not like the other descriptions we have. This isn't the portrait of a broken man, or at least depending on your definition, wandering a world and eventually pulled into the Dark Aether, all the while wallowing in their own self-pity. This Richtofen is not only proud, with a Richtofen-sized ego, as we could only expect, but he's successful. He has done what we would expect him to do. He's a hero of the Reich, and we are given this title in the same sentence we learn that the Axis powers won World War II in this alternative timeline. I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that this means that he, himself, was instrumental in this victory. I should mention here that we know Richtofen is of Group 935, as he prominently has a Group 935 patch on his arm, as if it is a division of the military. We already know that in the Aether's original dimension, Group 935 were on the cutting edge of technology for the Reich, but several failings kept them down. To touch briefly on what I outlined in the previous video, 935 had 3 core issues in the original dimension: a lack of Element 115, an inability to break the trust barrier and control their super soldiers and/or undead army, Richtofen actively sabotaging Group 935's research to make sure his own progressed. Now, of course, things were a bit different in Dimension 63, or, for example, come the Agonia fracture, but nevertheless, we're seeing an entirely different version here. Now, ignoring any possible conspiracy theories about Maxis intentionally sabotaging his own research to possibly protect his family, a video on which I should have out soon or possibly already out, which reveals the true nature of Samantha Maxis' mother, we have to assume that at minimum, one of these 3 issues are solved in this timeline to allow Germany to win World War II. On the topic of Element 115, we shouldn't necessarily assume that this dimension even has access to it, as we don't know for sure if it was in the Aether multiverse or not. Perhaps it instead used Ethereum or some other exotic material. Either way, if Group 935 had a larger supply of a magical element than in their original incarnation, it would certainly make them more effective. Not only would it speed up research, but it would give someone like Richtofen ample cause to investigate the greater mysteries of reality. Something we know he was already actively doing in the original dimension, what with the MPD, the Agathan device, and so on. More Element 115, while it wouldn't solve the issue of the trust barrier, it would make the issue irrelevant. Who needs an undead army if you can build an infinite number of giant metal men and equip every soldier with a Wonderwolf DG2? So the core problem here is Richtofen sabotaging 935's research. In the previous video, I laid out some speculation that Richtofen instead killed Maxis in this reality at an earlier point and seized power of Group 935 himself. Instead though, here I want to present an alternative idea, one that I think might be more consistent with a lot of what we know and the way the narratives are progressing. Treyarch have made a really big fanfare of Samantha Maxis being gone on Reckoning. Moreover, in the 2 dimensions we know of in the Aether, we have only ever encountered one Samantha Maxis. Even in Origins, where the voice is different, it's still meant to be the same Sam. In that world, Maxis had no daughter, and in fact, had never had children. Now this is perhaps a leap, but I'm going to suggest something a bit radical. There was only one Samantha Maxis in the entirety of the Aether. Think about it. We know pretty explicitly she's special. She's visited by keepers throughout her life. Her soul's preservation is essential even though she isn't part of the Aether, like our 4 main characters. The fact she's had to be kept so close and safe from harm has always been a bit strange, as these forces of the multiverse don't show such care for the billions of other lifeforms who would otherwise suffer in the cycle. It seems to me that she may have been the only instance of a daughter of Ludwig Maxis in all of reality. What relevance does this have though? Well, it helps us to solve the 3rd problem, the rift between Richtofen and Maxis. We know that in Dimension 63, the Maxis there who knew Richtofen from a far earlier age was significantly more paternalistic to him. In this twisted world, I don't think that would necessarily be the case. Instead, I think that a Maxis without the constant desire to protect his daughter from harm would be solely focused on his work, and would be possibly easier to manipulate by Richtofen, or even agreeable to his desires. This is also consistent with Treyarch's apparent desire at the moment to keep Samantha Maxis seen as special. In Reckoning, they actively chose to go out of their way to tell us that Samantha is gone and there's no way to bring her back, apparently consumed by the Forsaken/the Dark Aether itself, and the characters have made peace with that. To introduce another Samantha, possibly even infinite versions of her now if the multiverse is returning, just feels like a really poor narrative decision, and a complete shift to the expectation. Why tell her she's dead just to bring essentially a different version back? If instead this is a dimension where Samantha was never born, it explains the success Group 935 had. Hell, it's even possible that in this dimension, Ludwig Maxis himself never even existed. We know that in Dimension 63, Maxis wasn't the leader of Group 935, nowhere close in fact. He and Richtofen were brought into the organization at a later date, and Maxis himself chose to defect from that world's 935 because of his disagreement with the leaders, contacting the Allies himself. So, for Group 935 to exist in a dimension, we don't even need a Ludwig Maxis to exist. So, where does that leave Richtofen then? Well, in my previous video, I did make a slight oversight by saying he may have journeyed into the Dark Aether intentionally. I'm no longer sure that's entirely the case, because if we examine the word choice in the blog, we see that Richtofen finds himself torn from 935 in a world where the Axis powers triumphed over the allied nations. So he's torn from that world by force, which seems to do away with the notion that he has chosen to be here. It's also interesting that he seems to be pulled in right after the Axis powers have won, perhaps even on the day of the war's end itself, so he has no time to savor the victory. We know though that he can't be totally out of his depth here, as we are also told he vows that reality itself will ultimately bow to his designs. Clearly he has some notion of what's going on, and a desire to harness these forces. When we see the intro cutscene of Ashes of the Damned, it appears as if all of the characters have arrived at relatively the same time, but there is no way whatsoever to know if this is the case. The Warden's appearance may indicate this, but he may have just simply wanted to collect all of the essence in one go. Until we learn how exactly Richtofen and his group came to be there, we can't know for sure. What is incredibly interesting, however, is the appearance of Group 935's insignia on all of the jump pads on Ashes of the Damned, and also the power generators. It's possible this appears on other technology too, but currently we don't know of any. Players were quick to point out that it seems strange for the jump pads, the generators, and all of the prominent, helpful signage to litter the terrain when the Warden is clearly not too fond of us. I don't think the Great Voice, Thanos' shadow benefactor, the Warden, wants us dead yet, but I also don't think he would go out of his way to help us. So what if Richtofen himself is responsible for these additions? The Great Voice would have no reason to take Group 935 technology for the jump pads if he could simply just manifest anything out of the Dark Aether. Furthermore, the lack of any Group 935 location on the map as one of the points of interest in Ashes of the Damned makes it all the more clearer that these are an oddity. You'd expect them to be Project Janus, given the spawn area of the map, and the fact that there's other Janus things all over the map. For example, it has been leaked that there's going to be an Uber Klaus inside a Janus unit, but no, these things are totally unrelated to any point of interest on the map, with seemingly no reason to be. The only connection to Group 935 whatsoever we could find is through Richtofen. Richtofen's defining character trait has always been to have far more knowledge than people he's paired with. It was the same with Primus, with him knowing and having read the Chronorium and guiding them to a better tomorrow before he clued the others in on what was going on with the blood vials, etc. The same with Ultimus when he touched the MPD and got a greater understanding of the universe itself, whilst his lackeys, his clones, his brainless clones, tagged along. Richtofen's other defining trait is that he hides this well. The blog post tells us that Richtofen is actively hiding his colossal ego and sadistic personality beneath his humor and charisma. So what else is he hiding? It seems to me that it must surely be a wealth of knowledge on the Dark Aether, prior to them even meeting. Primus Richtofen hid his knowledge behind a facade of benevolence. He was doing the right thing, but it was a hard path, and so he couldn't dare share it with his friends. That was his excuse. Ultimus Richtofen outright lied constantly, and, to be fair, Ultimus was so mentally damaged by the experiments visited upon them that they couldn't figure Richtofen out even if they wanted to. Janus Richtofen veiled the truth behind so many layers of conspiracy, narratives, and counter-narratives that even the most skilled intelligence agent of the Cold War couldn't unpick it. Weaver was literally working for him the whole time without having any idea. So what's left for this new Richtofen? I think, possibly, that he tells the truth. Not out of the goodness of his heart, but because he knows it won't matter. Rather than manipulating, lying, or constructing elaborate webs of conspiracy, this Richtofen is subtler, hiding his true motives without ever telling a genuine lie. Lying through omission. For Richtofen to genuinely want to bend reality to his designs, a goal shared most clearly with Ultimus, and to a lesser extent Janus Richtofen, he has to understand a lot about reality itself. If he's more than a weapon scientist from Germany, there's no reason he should know this. Even if he has a great understanding of every scientific discipline, he ought to be as in the dark as anyone else in the Dark Aether. It took Strauss and Gray years of boots-on-the-ground experimentation to learn a modicum of information about the realm, just as with Project Endstation before then. And so, can we expect Richtofen to have experimented in the same way? Perhaps. Project Endstation seems like an apt comparison. Vogel, a genius to be sure, but nowhere near the level of Richtofen, pierced the dimensional veil to the Dark Aether by accident in 1944. The teleporter test with Kurtz actually echoes many of the radios we hear from Group 935 in World at War and Black Ops 1, where some of 935's most important discoveries were accidental. What would Endstation have accomplished if instead of Vogel, there was Richtofen? The reasons for Endstation failing ultimately were due to a funding conflict. Vogel, through essentially trial and error, came so close to turning the tide of the war. Heinrich Himmler's obsession with the occult caused vital funding to be directed to von List's crude, magical effort, and meant that by the time Endstation had achieved anything useful, it was far too late. In Richtofen's world, there would likely be no Endstation, no Die Wahrheit, no conflicting goals, just a singular point to focus all of Germany's war effort into. Group 935. From an early point, perhaps immediately in 1939 or even before, this 935 may well have done what Endstation did and pierced the dimensional veil, especially if they already had access to exotic material, say 115 or perhaps Ethereum itself, or even premium material I guess, being in a far-flung, irrelevant dimension of no consequence to the cycle. The eyes of the Apothegons and Keepers would be far away from this Richtofen's goals, and with no Maxis to impede him, the natural charisma we know from the blog post he possesses would have quickly allowed him to ascend the ranks of 935 to the point where he would have to be regularly in contact with the Nazi leadership themselves. This Richtofen would succeed where Endstation failed, sending teams into the newly discovered Dark Aether, not simply one like Operation Boulder, but far more akin to Project Janus's operations, with full teams mapping the dimension, cataloguing lifeforms, killing the creatures, bringing back materials for research. He's still Richtofen at the end of the day and will act in similar ways, so we can be pretty sure about this. He himself may not have journeyed into the Dark Aether at this point, but he would certainly be more aware of it than anyone else. Through both radical new science and ancient lore discovered in the realm, he would learn of reality's true structure, of the Aether and the Dark Aether, possibly even coming to understand that there were many versions of himself. But these would be of no concern to him, as like his other self once said, he would want to be the one who did all of the hard work. With jump pad infrastructure and powerful generators throughout the Dark Aether, Group 935 would be able to ensure the German army could strike at any target in the world, bringing the war to a close. But Richtofen perhaps miscalculated just how unstable he had made the veil. Through constant back and forth between the realms, the thin membrane between the two dimensions would have gotten weaker and weaker, possibly at the very center of his operations, and eventually it would have been plunged plunged into the Dark Aether. This would be unintentional for Richtofen, but unlike the other characters, who are frightened and want nothing more than to escape, this would be an unexpected bump in the road. Perhaps even an unintended acceleration of his plans. To control reality itself, he would need the Dark Aether's power. He would need the Shadowsmith's power, and would have, I believe, almost certainly intended to claim it by force. Now, he has simply been forced to make a move on this board earlier than he would have liked. Does Richtofen have a grand scheme this time around? Well, do birds fly? What do you think? Is Richtofen truly going to betray us again, or is something else at play? What do you think about the idea that there's only one Samantha Maxis in the whole ether? Leave your comments down below and let me know what you want to see as we approach the final weeks before Ashes of the Dam's release. Plenty more videos to come. I can't wait for all the theorizing on release with the return of the original crew, bleeding the Ether and Dark Aether stories together. Thank you for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe if you're not for the latest and greatest Call of Duty news and information. So anyways, thank you for watching, and bye. To conclude this video, I want to shout out the fact that I finally decided to make a Patreon and Cameo account, both of which will be linked below if you want to help support the channel. On Patreon, you can sign up for the lowest tier of just $1.50 a month to get exclusive access for my Discord, where we can discuss zombies lore, trivia, or whatever you desire. A place where you lot, my community, can better connect. Your names will also appear at the end of videos thanking you. For $5.50 a month, you get all of that, and I will be doing exclusive monthly Q&As. And for $16.50 a month, you again get all of that, and I will be doing exclusive lore videos, such as unpacking niche parts of the Treyarch documents I've been breaking down on my channel that don't as much suit a main channel video. For the highest tier, only for those with the ability to and who really want to help out the channel, you get special bonuses I've yet to determine and verbal shoutouts at the end of every video. Over on Cameo, I can do funny videos reading lines from zombies, memes like how do we tell him, birthday wishes for friends or family, or whatever else you desire, practically anything. Of course, none of this is necessary, just watching and enjoying the videos helps me immensely and I greatly appreciate it. However, I think it's about time I start setting up additional revenue streams because Zombies' popularity is tumultuous and always goes through ups and downs. As I'm sure you've lately seen on the channel, viewership is down a lot. We go through big highs when new games release, but then during these drought periods, I need more income stability so I don't have to worry as much about it and I can focus more on improving the quality of the content. My highest quality videos are not always the ones that best please YouTube algorithms, so instead, this way I can produce my best work knowing I don't have to think as much about how well the content's going to perform. So if you'd like to support me on Patreon for exclusive content or would like a simple Cameo message, you can do so to further support me via the links below, but only if you can afford it and you actually want to help me. Don't feel like you are forced to, don't worry, I'll survive. It would just help relieve some of the pressure during inconsistent periods on the channel, so I don't have to solely rely on AdSense revenue and still maintain the sheer quantity and quality of content that I put out. Obviously, I pump out literally a boatload of content, and some of these are absolutely crazy projects over hour-long videos, so it's a lot on my plate, especially when these videos don't perform particularly well. And I've not been doing many sponsorships lately to help supplement revenue either, so it would greatly help. Thank you for any generous person once again who does kindly support the channel. It means the absolute world and will really help keep this boat afloat.